We are starting a series today, and if you've never been with us before, what we do is we will take one area and we will break it down into a few different weeks so that each week it will build. We focus on one thing per week, and with it being Valentine's Day, I don't remember Valentine's Day falling on a Sunday since I've been here. Part of the reason for that is that this is a leap year, and for those of you who don't know, a leap year means literally last year Valentine's Day was on a Friday, then it leaped over Saturday and went to Sunday. So this is Valentine's Day, and that's where the leap year thing comes from, is that leaping over that day. Now, Valentine's Day is a holiday that a lot of people really don't understand the true meaning, and the reason they don't understand the true meaning is because there's various stories that took place from it. So a lot of people look back to who Saint Valentine was, and there were actually 3 different Saint Valentines, and the one that is the most popular as far as the stories go is that one of the emperors decided that it would be better for young single men to fight in war than those that were married. And so the emperor said, here's what we're going to do. Young men are not allowed to be married right now. That way I can beef up my army and we can be ready to defend things. And so a guy by the name of Valentine decided that was not very bright. And so he decided he was going to marry people. And so he was marrying people secretly. Well, eventually the emperor found out. And when he found out, he had him thrown in prison and eventually had him killed to set as an example. So you hear this term as far as Valentine's Day Massacre, or the things that took place as far as Valentine's go. This just happens to be one of the stories behind it. And then through that, it was like, oh my goodness, this guy was trying to bring people together from love, and all these things. One thing led to another, and finally in the 1800s, people started celebrating it more as we celebrate it today by sending cards. In fact, a lady made the first set of mass cards with all kinds of lace and ribbon and things like that, and it started, and it grew from there in the 1800s to today, when over 1 billion, that's with a B, 1 billion cards are sent out or given. Now here's the thing, of those 1 billion cards, 150 million of them are actually exchanged. And that means that a guy's giving it to a girl and a girl's giving it back to a guy. And you don't really know what's going to happen until you actually open it up and read the card. So for some guys, they're really putting themselves out there. They're really hoping. For some ladies, they're really putting themselves out there. And, you know, their card might say, hey, you know what, I think you're groovy, and I dig ya, and all those other kind of things. And then he opens it up, and he's like, you've been friend zoned. Oh, right? I mean, you're putting yourself out there whenever you do this exchange of the cards. So, and it isn't everywhere. It isn't everywhere as far as just for couples, but they also on Valentine's Day, we send cards to people that we care about personally. And so Deanna, this week, she brought home the cards from her class, and there are certain relationships that are out there that are just, they're special. And one of them is between a teacher and a student. And so this is what the students had to say to their Valentine, Mrs. Stahl. Why are you laughing already? I mean, red one. All right, here we go. Here we go. You are fun because you always make me laugh. You're also cool, smart, amazing, nice, and oh, you're beautiful. I know, right? Okay. Mrs. Stahl, you are kind and nice and funny too because you are always happy. You teach us really good. Did I mention she's the English and reading teacher herself? You teach us too much, our brains fall out. Sometimes I do stuff, I'm not, wait. Oh, sorry, but spelling is one of the things she also teaches, and allowed to spell A-W-O-L-L-E-D. Sometimes I do stuff I'm not allowed to, I'm sorry, but you're nice, kind, caring, and a nice, cute teacher. You're always so fun. Every time I walk into your room, I have a smile on my face. I also like when you make funny noises in the room. My boys make funny noises, so here we go. Dear Mrs. Stahl, I love your line impression from The Wizard of Oz. Oz, A-W-S. I think we might have to see that Wizard of Oz impression one day. What do you think? Yeah. We'll see if there's an impression someday. You are very funny, very nice, because that's your personality. You are the most beautiful person I've ever seen. You are so nice and the best because you teach us things we need to know. And there's always that one kid. Be a Jedi. Not a rebel. You're the best. And then the bottom row, you're nice to me. And here we go. I like your glasses. Remember those verbs. Hi, Mrs. Stahl. You are one of the best language arts teacher ever. You are very, very, very beautiful. Your hair is very pretty. Your clothes are better than mine. All right, and then this is the one that we just got such a kick out of. We just loved it. Dear Mrs. Stahl, you're so pretty for your age. You make my eyes glamor. Saying, wow, she is purty. Your student. So these are heartfelt, right? And they're great when you hear and read these things. And relationships are a huge, huge area in our lives. And I don't know that there's much better relationships than when it comes to a teacher to a student to a teacher, a coach to a player to a coach, a nurse to a patient to a nurse. There are certain nurses, too, that it amazes me the things they're able to do. If you've ever been to hospice, the people that are in hospice, I don't know how they're able to do what they're able to do. Nurses and doctors that are in psych wards or in terminal illness type wards, and whether it was cancer or whatever it may be. I don't know how they go through and do everything they do, but that God has poured His love through them, and they have chosen to pour that love into others. And we get to witness that every day, and for some of us, we get to be a part of that every day. But the most important relationship that God has ever set aside is, one, our relationship with God. And then for this earthly relationship, the most important relationship is that from husband to wife and wife to husband. It is this relationship that is so important. It is the relationship that has struggled the most in our society. And over the years, it has deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated. And someone at some point, sometime, has to make the decision that they're going to follow God's way, or they're going to continue to follow the world's way. And the world's way has made it very, very easy for us to walk out on this covenant relationship that God has set aside. It's not a contract that you get into. If you come to me and I do your wedding, the only one that signs anything is me. You don't sign the relationship and the wedding certificate back and forth. I'm the one that signs it. The person that is set to ordained to do this ceremony, is the only one that signs that. You sign when you say your vows one to another. And you sign when you say, I put my faith before you, and I put God's love before you. These are what I bring to the table when I walk down this aisle together. Because these are the words that we say before God. And yet this relationship, once again, is the one we talk about the least when it comes to the time of the church. So over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about it. You know why? It's very important. Because some of you are sitting out there right now, and you've gone through an ugly divorce, or you're going through an ugly divorce. And you're looking back, and you're beating yourself up, and you're trying to point to things, and you're blaming yourself, and you're trying to understand what happened, and where did I go wrong, and what was the step that I took, and how could I screw this up? Or you're looking at it and going, well, this is where they screwed up and how they screwed up. And if I'd have just known, if I'd have just understood, if I'd have just realized just how important this godly covenant is, maybe I would have stepped in and done things a little bit differently. But you're feeling lost and you're feeling alone, and you're also feeling like, you know what, I'm really not worthy of having that relationship. That is not true. When you put God first, you will see that God truly intends that covenant to start with Him, and for you to have that covenant relationship with another person. If you're single right now and you're like, man, I've been single for a long time, and I'm starting to wonder if there is anybody out there. I keep hearing people saying how they have a soulmate, and this is their soulmate, and God's got that special one, and okay, so where is mine? I mean, there's hundreds of millions of people in this country. I would think that there would be at least one for me. So am I in the wrong state? Am I in the wrong job? Am I in the wrong profession? Am I in the wrong area? What is it? Because I'm not finding that special one. Maybe you're in a separation right now, and you're at that point where you're like, I want to get back, and I want us to come together, but I don't know the words to say. God handles all these things. Maybe you're getting ready to walk down the aisle, or you think that he or she may propose, and it may even be tonight, because this is the day when more people get engaged than any other day. 6 million people are going to be engaged today. How many single people are in here? Raise your hand. Raise it up. Okay, now all my kids put them down. Boy, just my kids. No, everyone's leaving up. My kids put them down. Just my kids. Okay, so some of you, this can happen today. See what I did there? Okay? But this could happen today. Not you, because you're too young. But this could happen today. 6 million people. So if you are expecting that question soon, or it might be coming, are you prepared to answer it before what God has to say about this? Students, listen, this is important. This is so important. God wants you to do it His way, and you choose to want to do it His way right now, and yet the one thing that you will give away when it comes time to find that special someone is, you know what, I really wanted to find someone who was after God's heart and who put God first. And then I decided, you know what, I can show them God, and I'll bring them God, and everything will change. If it hasn't changed in the first 15, 25, 35, 45 years, what makes you feel that suddenly you can make that change that they never chose to give to God? You may have 4, 5, 6, 7 months in it. They've had 25 plus years of it. Think about that. So this covenant that God set aside, this relationship that God set aside, He set aside because He chose to be married to His special people. And the first relationship, before there were ever children, before there were ever grandchildren, before there was ever bloodshed, before there was ever work, which some of us are married to, before there were ever material possessions, which some of us are married to, before any of those things, before there were smartphones or other devices that some of us are slowly using as our misters or mistresses and getting away from what God is intending. Before any of those things, God set aside this one special relationship between Adam and Eve. And there was a covenant that they made before God and a covenant that they made to one another. But then later on, in what we know today as the New Testament church, there is the same relationship between us as the church and Christ. And between them, between those two, was that special relationship that was set between God and His chosen people, Israel. His chosen ones, Judah. The chosen race that we know as the Jews. We're going to be in the Old Testament in a book called Hosea, if you want to turn there. And in Hosea today, Hosea is what some people would call a minor prophet. The reason it's called the minor prophet isn't because his ideas were not quite as good as the major prophets. It's because in these minor prophets, this is the beginning of 12 books of the minor prophets, Hosea is the first, not chronologically, but he is the first of the prophets that is written in here. Hosea literally means salvation. It's an offtake of the word Joshua, which is also an offtake of the name Jesus. So Hosea, the book of the 12 minor prophets, starts with the focus on salvation. The reason that they are called minor prophets is because of the length of the books. Because there's not as many chapters. In Isaiah you get 50 plus, 60 plus chapters. In this one you're going to get about 12. This book focuses the most on the marriage relationship, on the salvation relationship, and on the mercy that comes with it. But it doesn't start that way. It doesn't start that way. I have 3 Bibles today. When I walked up here, Lane's like, oh my goodness, you have 3 Bibles? How long of a message is this going to be? And I said, listen, there's no football tonight. So we're going to go to about 4 or 5 p.m. We've got a lot to talk about. We're not going to do that. We're going to go normal times. Just this book actually pronounces the names right, and I butcher the names. So if I go through and I pronounce it wrong, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to pronounce it wrong, and you can go ahead and say, I would pronounce it another way, that's fine. A lot of times with the names, we stop reading the Old Testament because we can't pronounce the names. But the names are important to today because they tie into the message. So here we go. We're going to start in verse 2. It says, when the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go take to yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness, because the land is guilty of the vilest adultery and departing from the Lord. So we learned right away from the beginning that the thing that we can do the most is literally sell ourselves or go out to have a relationship with another God that is not the one true God. So we go out to choose whatever that God may be. And it can be in witchcraft. It can be, in this case, Baal. It could be an Asherah through a pole. These are the things that were taking place in the Old Testament. Nowadays it can be in a material being. It can be in some kind of possession. It could be in a car or a boat or a plane that we put ahead of God and we put ahead of our spouse. It can be in some kind of device that we spend hours and hours on and take away from the very relationships that God wants us to focus upon. It's easy to have it happen. And it starts slowly. And then the next thing you know, it takes off. And we don't even realize it, but we're consumed by it. What happened in this case is God said, you're going to go take an adulterous woman. But if you notice the way it says, when the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go take yourself an adulterous wife and children of unfaithfulness. Now, this is kind of a math thing. But when you have a baby, how long does that take? It takes 9 months, right? Correct? Now, you might have to try a few times. It may take 10 months, 11 months, 12 months. But once you find out that you're going to have a baby, it takes 9 months. Gomer didn't have any children. That's her name. She does not have any children. They are not married yet. So she is not an adulterous woman. So in other words, this means God walked up to this guy and said, hey, you are going to take this woman and she is going to be an adulteress. And your children are going to be terrible. The worst there is. But me, God, speaking through you as the prophet, you get to go out to minister to everybody else while your entire house is falling apart. Good luck with that. Now, if God came to you as a single person right now and gave you that option, who's signing up for it? None of us are, right? There's no way I'm going to do that. Now, I'll take us back for a second. Sometimes we get to the point of loneliness so much that we're like, you know what? I think I'm willing to take my chances. I'm discouraged. I've been trying this for years. Nothing seems to work out, and at least I'll have someone. Is that someone worth losing your relationship with the one that loves you more than anything, ever? The one who set aside this special relationship, this covenant. Because sometimes many of us are so willing to do what, hey, all of our friends are getting married, and our friends' friends are getting married, and I'm getting to that age, and my clock is ticking, and I'm not so sure, and all those things that fill us up, that we forget that God's saying, hey, listen, my word in Ecclesiastes tells you that there is a time for everything. There is a time for everything under the sun. And that means that there is a time for everything, then there is my timing in everything. And so you don't need to settle. You don't need to be discouraged. You don't need to feel that loneliness. You need to take that back to God to rest in His love, and He will direct your paths, but you have to trust Him. Some of you are sitting there going, well, John, it's easy for you to say you have a wife who her class thinks that she's purty, right? And you have 4 kids, so it's really easy for you to say, because none of them are in diapers anymore, and they're all in school, and some of them are driving, and all those kind of things. We all lose focus at times. But that focus has to turn back to a loving God and a loving Savior and the things that He put in place within these relationships. So Hosea has just signed up for being His prophet, and this is what he said to him. You are going out, and you're going to have the worst of the worst. She's going to be an adulteress, and your children are going to be terrible. They're going to be terrible. It says, so he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Now seriously, let's stop here for a second, too. The girl's name is Gomer. Does anybody else stop there? I mean, how hot does she have to be? Right? Because every time that's my girlfriend, that's Gomer. And you're like, no. That kind of area. Are you serious? I mean, her name's Gomer. I mean, she has to be something special for you to walk around with a girlfriend named Gomer. But he's feeling like this is the one that God brought to him. So it says, so he married Gomer, and she conceived and bore him a son. Notice the verbiage. She bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. And that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel. Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Now notice, it didn't say gave birth to his daughter. And so there's some questions that arise within there as to whether or not this daughter is actually his. If you have the New Living Translation, it says, God says, name your daughter. So we'll give the fact that these 2 children are actually Hosea's and Gomer's together. It says, and the Lord said, call her okay, I'm going to try and get this name right. The Lord said, name her Lo Ruhamah. For I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. It's a tough one between different versions. Yet I will show love to the house of Judah, and I will save them, not by the bow, the sword or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but by the Lord their God. So all these things that you're expecting as far as a war, all these things as far as you're expecting as far as a battle goes, all these things, at the end of the day, the thing that's going to save you, and the thing that's going to save your house, and the thing that's going to save your relationship, and the thing that's going to save you in the steps that you're taking moving forward is the Lord your God. Do you trust Him enough in it? Do you turn to Him when it comes to these relationships? Do you believe that God can come into your husband or your wife enough when they hear about that love and say, I am going to make a change. I'm going to love you in the way that God made you, not in the way that I love, but through God's love. Even though my love language is physical touch or acts of service, your love language is words of encouragement and quality time, and I'm going to love you in those ways. Because we need to learn to love that special someone the way God made them. Remember this, when you get to the chance of being married and you have this opportunity to walk down this aisle, if you're 20, 25, 30, whatever it may be, you're just starting fresh. They have 20 plus years as to who they are already, or 30 plus years, whatever it may be. And so with that comes all of the baggage. See, with our kids, we have them from the beginning. And we love them from the beginning. And for moms, there's that special relationship that only a mom can truly feel. They delight in their child. The Bible talks about it and compares it to a baby being literally fed by the mom and then bouncing on their knee. They delight. It's such a love that you can only see it through that. And there's a special bond that takes place. But even for the dads, you're so proud of, this is my boy, this is my son, this is my little girl. They have that special place no matter what. But with our spouses, they came a lot longer, or a lot later, didn't they? They came with things that are going on in their minds and their hearts that I didn't know about. They didn't come out while we were dating. It didn't come out during the engagement. I didn't understand what was going on. And then for some of us, all of a sudden, things change. And we hit a thing that some people dub it as a midlife crisis. They're going through a hormone thing that's happening right now. They're not happy with who they are. They're not happy with the job they chose. They're not happy with the profession they're in. Just stay back for a while. And then changes will take place. And yet what you don't know and what you may not know is that they've already chosen to start living an entirely different life without you. And it's not one that God intended. That's exactly what happened here with Gomer. This is exactly what happened to Hosea. He had to put up with it. Why? Because this is what God called him to do. And sadly, for many of us, this stops us when it comes to loving others and living our life through our ministry. What if God calls me that? What if God intends that? What if God is going to do those things? I don't believe that God is going to do any of those things to you today. Because He paid the penalty through His Son on the cross. And He doesn't use the prophets the way He used them in the Old Testament. But He sure gives us His examples to turn to. The story continues, and it says, verse 8, after she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo Ammi. Now look at, notice this. It says, he had a son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo Ammi. So this is for sure the first time that we understand that this is not Hosea's son. Because in the first son, it said it bore him a son. And the second, we'll maybe give it to you because it says, name your daughter. But in this one, just, hey, you name that one. You name that one. And we see that Gomer has now entered that life as far as being an adulteress. But this is still up to Hosea to name the child. And so God says, name him Lo Ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. And watch what happens. Yet the Israelites will be like the sand on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, they will be called sons of the living God. And so literally at this point, it's talking about where God is saying to His people, you know what? I'm pretty much done. You guys were my chosen people, and you literally are going to be spread across like you cannot even believe. Israel, I'm breaking you apart. Judah, I'm going to break you apart, but you're going to have this opportunity to come back together. but you can be counted everywhere because Abraham is the father of all nations. And I can be able to count you everywhere. Boom, 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 boom. You're there, you're here, you're there, you're there, you're there. Everywhere, but I'm breaking you apart because you've lost your focus on me. And I am done with you as a people. This is, in a modern day, when we hear people say, you know what, we can't figure this out. It's irreconcilable. There's no way that we can live together. It's impossible for us to see eye to eye. And then these words come out. I want a divorce. I want a divorce. The most hurtful words, because when this takes place, somebody is going to be crushed. And many times, many people are going to be crushed. We said earlier about how we love our kids. We're going to pour that love into those kids, and we love them. But the remainder, the remnant of that divorce is still there. And we have that person we have to deal with. And we start to see all their cruel ways. We start to look back and point to it and say, yep, that's when I saw the distance taking place, and how did I not see it? And what is wrong with me? We start to blame ourselves because of it. And the pain from it doesn't go away anytime soon. I'd love to tell you that in my family that we haven't had any divorces, and yet I've watched and been there as brothers and sisters have gone through this. And the pain of it, because it doesn't just end in a day or a week or a year or many years. And for those of you right now that have friends that are going through this, the best thing that you can do is to give a little piece of your heart and a big piece of your ear and just listen. And just be there. And if you ask that person, they'll tell you, death would have been a whole lot easier. And they're right. Because there's closure to it. And there's no closure in this. It's constantly in your face, and you're constantly dealing with things, and you're constantly trying to ask, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And it's the same place that Hosea is in right now. What if she would have just focused on God? What if I wouldn't have worked so much? What if I would have been out so much? What if I would have been focused on not just God's love for all these people, but God's love for my wife? What if I would have been more focused? And yet he knew from the beginning that this was going to happen. And he still took it on. And now it's at this point where God's turning to his people and say, you know what? Enough. Enough. And this is where people want to point to God and say, see, he's just a puppet master. We're just a big experiment. He really didn't love us in the end anyway. And he doesn't really care all that much about me. He doesn't really give two hoots about what it is I think. He doesn't really, it doesn't matter to him that I have this loneliness. It doesn't matter to him that I'm completely discouraged. It doesn't matter to him that I have a time frame and I have a clock that's ticking and I have and I. But then God truly shows who God truly is in these next verses. And he says, the people of Judah and the people of Israel will be reunited, and they will appoint one leader, and will come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. And then he turns to Jezreel and he says, say of your brothers, my people, and of your sisters, my loved ones. In other words, in another version, he says he actually takes away the low part of their name. And when he takes away the low part of their names change meaning. And then changing the meaning says, they are my people, and they have obtained my mercy. Even in the worst situations, even how it is that you were conceived, even how wrong it was, even in having a baby out of wedlock, even in having a child that wasn't your own child, wasn't your husband's child, even in all these areas, Hosea, we're not going to punish the kids here. And we're not going to punish my people, even though I am upset. Wait, God gets mad? God gets angry? That's not the God that I want to serve. We're an image of him. You get mad? You get angry? Are the things that really stick in your craw? Are there things that really drive you crazy? Doesn't it bother you when someone else gets promoted and you should have been? Doesn't it bother you when someone else's names are in the headlines when they should have been your names? Doesn't it bother you when they get the lead and they're just a terrible person, or when they cheat and they get the A on the test and you studied your butt off and you got a C? All those things bother us. Where is it we turn to at those moments? And many times it is we turn to ourselves. And we don't turn back to this loving God. And what God is saying is, listen, if you'll give me this chance, if you will give me this opportunity, if you will know that I love you, I'm going to show you that mercy. And you will be completed through me. Some of you right where you sit today, I guarantee that you have a friend that is going through this struggle. Somewhere you sit today, you're about ready to head into this struggle. Some of you where you sit today, you're thinking there's no possible way that anyone or anything can fix this relationship that I'm about to run away from. Nothing can fix him. Nothing can fix her. And you have to make the choice today whether or not you believe that God can truly complete them and God can show them mercy. And then you have to make the decision as to whether or not you want to do the same. Valentine's Day is a very, very difficult holiday because there's a billion cards that are sent. And of those, only 15% are given back and forth in exchange. And of those, we have no idea how many of those the feelings are the same on both sides. 6 million people today will make the decision to walk the aisle and to say the vows before their loving God. They won't sign a contract, but they will make a covenant before Him. If you're single, you need to think about what it is that God has in store for you. Is God worth it enough for that relationship to be first? Even if you've gone too far physically and you need to pull back. For some of you, someone's already left. Or somebody's got a foot out the door. And you're just ready to let them go, and they can't wait to run. For some of you, you're so broken right now because you've already gone through this divorce, or you're getting ready to sign the papers for the separation, and it hurts a lot. For some of you, you're feeling like there's no possible way this loneliness and discouragement can get any worse. And for some of you, you're going to celebrate today, and you're going to celebrate on a birthday, and you're going to celebrate on an anniversary, and you're going to leave the rest of the days to yourself. Wherever it is that you are today, maybe you're mentoring someone, maybe you're in the midst of it, maybe you're that person that's there for that other person. Whoever it is that God has entrusted you to in your life, it is our choice every day as to whether or not we show God's love first. None of us know the next step that is coming. But we do know that God loves us so much that He set aside this special, perfect, covenant relationship above any relationship that we have on this earth. But it starts with that loving relationship with our Savior. Praise team's going to come up. Next week we're going to dive a little further into Hosea. We're going to find out a little bit about Gomer. And Lord willing, we have a video that we prepared for this week, but we had to push to next week because of some technical difficulties. And if we're able to show that, you're going to hear from a couple that sits here amongst you, who, if I turn the clock back 9 months, I would tell you there's no chance. There's no chance. Whenever I sit down with a couple, and we have a discussion, I ask this question. And I start with whoever's close to me. Usually I start with the husband. And this is what I ask. Do you want to be divorced? And I allow them to answer. And then I turn to the wife and I say, do you want to be divorced? And I allow her to answer. And if one of those two wants to be divorced, guess what? They're getting divorced. They're not willing to go to Christian counseling. They're not willing to give it to God. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I've had tough conversations with husbands and wives, and when they're done, they're like, what's the next step? And I've said, you've got to commit to 1 year of Christian counseling. Well, I don't know if they're going to do that. Then you're done. Well, how can you say that? I can say it because I've been around it a ton. And if one of the two wants to be divorced, that's what's going to happen. Because they're not willing to give it to God. And yet God can handle any relationship, but both sides have to be willing. You're going to hear from a couple, and when you hear it, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, they have no chance. And they didn't. God had other ideas. And they had to make the decision to give it to Him first. Just try to sit, just close your eyes and bow your heads. The praise team's going to play a little bit here. They'll ask you to stand in just a little bit. For right now, I just want you to take these moments and just think about the examples that we talked about today. The example of Hosea, who was a loving husband, who knew everything he was getting into. And a loving God who at the end of the day said, I can walk at any time because I'm God. But you, Israel, are my people. And this covenant that I have is the same covenant that we offer in marriage. At the end of the day, even when I'm angry, even when I don't like the things that you've done, even when I don't like the things that you think, or how you treat other people, even the spot that you're in your life where you're all alone, or someone's already left, through all of those things, through any of those things, know this: I am here to complete you, and I'm going to give you that mercy. Will you do the same